man on the moon. We're getting this all done in such a short time, so, it's just truly been a huge team effort from the city staff, from the architect staff. Everybody is putting in and working on it so hard, so, just thank you to everybody. Really appreciate it. We are gonna meet our schedule. We will have a bid package before the council on March 19th for consideration, so we are on track.
Okay.
We've been working with the DNR, and we've made submittals, answered their questions. We poked them today saying, hey, come on, get us our answers, let's keep it moving along. So we're in constant contact with them as well, so we're very comfortable with that. There will be the main bid package that has the building and all the buildings and the main site work. That'll be one big package that we'll get bids for. We're going to have a smaller secondary package that will address only the environmental because of the funding mechanism that we're going to use for that. So there will be two bids for your consideration on the 19th. But they're gonna run in parallel.
Okay.
But we need to do that to keep the funding separate, and the rules with one funding, we don't want to impact the bigger projects, so we need to keep them separate. And then lastly, I want to show you the bid page that the city has live. Rebecca and the communications team, Kelly and Jennifer, worked really, really hard on this. Dave gave a lot of information, which is really nice. If I can find departments. There we go. So if we go to departments here, and then we just scroll down to Public Works, we can come over to this facility study. And it says future development of Public Works facility. And then here's our webpage. Talks about what's coming soon. Has a tentative schedule on there. We've got the rendering that we showed the last time of the fly around. Some different facts about Public Works in general. And then we have a list of frequently asked questions. So if you click on this, it opens up a new page, and then you can click on each of the questions and answers all the way through.
It's 1906 South 53rd. I get
Yes,
it.
1906 South 53rd. Little throwback to our history here. So, and then we have some quick links to former studies and different information about how we got here, the site analysis. And so all kinds of really good information that we have out there. So just a brief update. Does anybody have any questions or comments that I need to address?
Any questions or comments? No? Okay. Well, thank you, Melinda.
Oh, great, thank you.
Next item is discussion regarding the city's snow plowing and parking enforcement policies, procedures, and practices. Alderman Stefanski, you asked for this meeting. You want to start it off, or?
I just figured with the issues that we had this last snowfall, it would be good to discuss it and have Dave come up and share some stuff that they did with this last storm and how they fought it. And you know, we saw on social media people constantly just ripping on how the plowing was done, but a lot of them don't seem to understand what goes into it. So I figured it'd be best for Dave to kind of give us an overview.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
Dave did a nice
opportunity.
presentation at the police neighborhood meeting.
I saw that on the
It was
video.
good.
But I appreciate the opportunity. And again, I do want to say we're not perfect. We try our best. I can't say enough for our staff. Multiple shifts, unexpected scheduling. There was all individuals that came in and didn't deny themselves the requests. They came in to work. And I do want that known at this time that we got a pretty good group for that. So snow and ice control, I just want to give a brief summary. Our goal is to provide good traffic, safe passage throughout the city. Could be the patrons, could be visitors. How do you do that? Is through the main thoroughfares, which is the most used streets throughout the city. Priorities are such. So when you had the main thoroughfares used the most of our attention is dedicated to the main thoroughfares. Obviously, when a snowstorm starts, we put our attention to the main thoroughfares, but we don't forget about the residential streets as well as the alleys, so on and so forth. And you see the other responsibilities that we have to put our attention to. This slide is just indicating to you the summary of items that we're responsible for. What I want the public to understand is the main thoroughfares, we have 45 center lane miles of our main thoroughfares. How many streets is that? About 33, I guess. It takes not one, not two, but 3 vehicles to do certain mains. Cleveland Avenue, National Avenue. Why? Because of the width. When those vehicles are out plowing, it could be a tandem dump truck along with 2 refuse packers or recycling packers. It takes time for them to travel the 3 or 4 miles. Anybody want to guess the speed?
5.
8 miles per hour. And that depends on how heavy the snow is. So it's rather slow, but cumbersome, but try our best. But I get that we can't reach out to each and every space throughout the city. So anyway, main thoroughfares, 45 center line miles. We consolidate those 33 streets into 15 routes. Residential, we have 140 center lane miles, which we compile those into 31 residential routes for each and every driver. Alleys, it's 5 routes for about 40 miles. Dead ends, cul-de-sacs, sidewalks, so on and so forth. Those are responsibilities. Once the mains, the residential streets, as well as the alleys are addressed, then those same people are going back to do the cul-de-sacs, the sidewalks, so on and so forth. What equipment do we use? Well, ideally, we like to have dump trucks for all the routes. Why? Because, thank you. Because the turning radius is optimal. You can spread as you plow the salt. You have an underbody scraper in most of the dump trucks. You may have a wing blade, so 5 of the 18 dump trucks, thank you to the council for allowing us to purchase those wing blades where you can do a lane and a half, more efficient, so that helps. Pickup trucks, about 4 years ago, any and all pickup trucks that we purchased, we were, again, allowed to purchase those that had a all-wheel drive. So anything and everything that has all-wheel drive is out plowing. Garbage recycling packers are just that. Their main priority is collecting garbage and recycling. However, we do use those for snow plowing. Now, they're not the best. They're good on mains because it's straightaway. But once they get into their assigned residential area, they tend to have a hard time with turning radius as well as going through without, when you have large amount of snow, they tend to get stuck. It's a little bit more easier. Front end loaders, it'd be awesome to have 20 front end loaders, but we have 8. They're optimal. They're the ones that are on the mains as well. Once they're done with their mains, they are dedicated for the alleys because they are smaller. When you have the T-alleys, you have a tighter turning radius, 11-foot blades. So again, that's something that's just ideal having those in our fleet. Last year, with the council's approval, we purchased 3 all-terrain Bobcat 4-wheelers. These replace the German-made holders. They're more flexible, they're more durable. They are the ones that provide us a lot of efficiency, flexibility. So this is the first year that we've been using them, and we're very pleased with them. The 200 series dump truck, that is a little bit more than a 1 ton, one and a half ton. So when we're plowing through a residential street and we cannot get through because it's too narrow for the refuse packer or the dump truck, that person, that driver will call in and say, hey, I can't get through 59th Street from this to this. We will try to send either a pickup truck or the 200 series dump truck, at least to get a passage for the residents. So how do we plan? Well, we listened to the National Weather Service in Sullivan. Very good people. We have a lot of virtual meetings with them. A lot of it depends on the type of snowstorm, obviously. So when you have sleet, obviously maybe salt or brine would accomplish that goal of safe passage through West Allis. But when you have snow and then you have freezing temperatures thereafter, that means that we have to get to a lot of places in a very short period of time before it adheres to the road surface. So factors that we consider in our meetings at Public Works are how long is the snowstorm or the sleet or whatever storm that we're predicted to have? What type is it? It could start out as a sleet storm into a snowstorm and then again have freezing rain thereafter where it's compressing the snow into the street. How long is the storm? Is it 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? It matters because if you want to continue services, then you have to plan and say, what services do we want to cancel? What shifts do we want to start scheduling? We do not have enough people or enough vehicles to have 45 trucks out there all the time at every given moment. So, and you guys realize that as well. Wind conditions. Usually the snowstorm comes from the southwest, but every now and then it comes from the lake. We get enhanced snow. In some cases, even lowers their accumulations, which is a good thing. But most of all, it's unpredictable. So we could be predicted for a 1 inch, 2 inch snowstorm, and we may receive 3 or 4 inches. Now, how does that differ? It means we're going from a salting operation of 10, 15 trucks. Now we're planning for a full plow operation to remove the snow from the street throughout the city. Other factors that we got to consider is the time of day, rush hour, morning, in the evening, high visibility traffic. How can you get through to these routes on the mains when there's high traffic? So then we may go into the residential sections. Day of the week, obviously you have vacations, you have weekends. I'm trying, to get all the staff necessary. People are sacrificing their plans, but we've always had enough personnel and staffing. So we gotta consider what we need to do before, during, and after a storm. And sometimes it may change at a moment's notice, but pre-event, we do have meetings prior to, up to a week prior to a storm, and then 24 hours before the storm hits with our staff, all our managers and supervisors. Obviously, we talked about the duration of the storm, but also the equipment availability as well as the staff. Winter watch person, there's a person that's assigned throughout the winter months, throughout 1 week. That person is assigned to watch over West Allis during the non-business hours. So they are the first contact. They will be alerted by either the police department or themselves to go out and make sure the road conditions are safe for the patrons and the visitors of West Allis. But also they have the authority to call in up to 5 to 10 drivers to either salt or plow on their own. So the plan of action, again, could change. It could start out with the basic brining, then to salting and plowing, so on and so forth. So starting out with the basic protection of what we like to apply, or the applications, is brining. conditions gotta be optimal, then temperatures gotta be at least 25 degrees, no moisture, no rain, no sleet, because obviously it'll, have runoff where the brine, will not stick or adhere to the road surface. When you do have optimal, conditions, brine itself will treat up to about 1 inch of snow. So that allows us more time to bring in more drivers as well. When you do apply brine to the salt, either with the spreaders, it creates a more adhesion or stickiness to the salt, creates less bouncing, so therefore it saves, it's more efficient. It doesn't bounce to the curb, so it adheres more and activates the salt more readily. So general information, plowing, so about 4 years ago, anytime there's a snow accumulation on the road surface, especially on the main thoroughfares, we plow it off, so the salt application can go directly on the road surface. That way it's more efficient, we're not wasting salt. When we go to residential sections, it may be 1 or 2 inches, and I'll say, go ahead and put the blades down and apply salt. Now, we could go through and if it's 1 or 2 inches, just apply salt, but it's more efficient. We're getting more bang for our buck when we plow the driving lanes and applying salt. It works quicker and faster and more efficient. Once it is compacted, so the more traffic that's driving in on the main thoroughfares or residential sections, before we get there, high traffic areas, it's hard to react to that. It's hard, and Alderperson Grisham and Alderperson Hune as well. There were some areas in your area that it just bonded. The temperatures lowered, and we just couldn't get that bonding or that snow or ice from the road surface. So that's one that, you know, as the temperatures increase, I thought, you know, the underbody scrapers on the dump trucks would scrape it off. It didn't. So we had to wait for warmer temperatures. We did apply material for that, but it was just kind of a time thing. So we do get calls regarding, hey, I seen a refuse packer, recycling packer drive through my residential area and they didn't put any salt down. Well, we do not have the capacity, a refuse packer or recycling packer to spread salt. So we are limited in that means that when the dump trucks are into their assigned areas, once they're done, then they have to go in and treat those areas of other plows that don't have that capacity. So the challenges that we face, again, duration of the storm, it just means staffing wise, equipment wise. You never know, but for the most part, the weather forecasts have been fairly accurate. Residential streets, when you have high amounts of accumulation of snow, you may have 5 or 10 drivers initially with a snowstorm. We tend to move them from the main thoroughfares once they are drivable into the residential sections. Why? At least to have drivable passage for the patrons and visitors, at least to get through for the emergency vehicles. Again, that's 140 lane miles, so it does take time. So why don't you call in all 40 or 45 employees at that time and do that? We just can't, because we can't waste the labor time and the amount of time for all the staff to report during a snowstorm, because if the duration of snow that is accumulating exceeds more than 16 hours, we wouldn't have any staff left. We are very fortunate to have new employees, but with new employees, we have training. So 40% of our current staff is 3 years or less. So they're kind of learning on the job. We did, once they're hired, we do go through routinely their potential assigned route, and then kind of have them with the vehicle that they may be assigned with. But it's nothing like the real thing. So once you get out there, there's a fear of hitting the curb, getting close to a parked vehicle or vehicles. The temptation of going down a narrow street and saying, yeah, I will try it, and then you're halfway through and then you gotta back up. So I give them kudos, but that's on us that we're trying to provide more training for those new employees. But we're excited we have a good group of employees. Special requests, you guys hear special requests, we do as well. We try to address those throughout the storm and after. But always remember, when you tell the patrons that call you, it takes away from the person on a certain task or route to go and address that one or two different type of special requests. You guys, I think, are aware that in the last snowstorm, not only did we have 14 inches, but it was a long duration of storm, but we had a couple trees go down. We had about 30 or 40 trees that fell, large limbs. It was a headache, to be certain, but we had a good group, so those forestry employees or staff that were assigned to plowing, we had to remove them and say, hey, chainsaws, we have to address this, it's more urgent. So therefore it delayed in their routes, the signed routes of the 31 residential routes. Route number 10 may not have been addressed right away because he, the arborist that was assigned there, had to go and, address those other issues. So we may get main breaks, traffic controllers, street lights knocked down, so on and so forth. It's usually with a large plow operation like this, we can put on 400 to 500 easily lane miles out plowing the residential, the mains, the safety islands, so on and so forth, the alleys. Snow emergency, another change was approved late this fall. Again, the snow emergencies, when you are on a major thoroughfare, there's about 33 streets of those, there's no parking at all. So main thoroughfares, no parking through the duration of a snow emergency when it's declared. Residential parking. Well, number one, you have to have an overnight parking permit. That's number one. Check. Second step is look at your residence and see if you have a driveway or a garage. Preferably, if you can park there, that would be ideal. So we want to create less parking on the residential streets. So instead of 8 miles per hour, maybe we could go 15, and we could just go straight through and plow. So with that, the residential streets, when parking vehicles before midnight, so today is the 6th, it's even. Before midnight, you get home at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, you park on the even side of the street. For those that may get home after midnight or work third shift, you're getting home on an odd day. I shouldn't, not an odd day, but
Yeah.
odd calendar day.
The date is odd.
Odd numbered.
Yeah, there you go, thanks. So you look at the calendar and you say, well, I'm a little bit late, I gotta go to the calendar date prior to, which is even. So you park on the even side for this example of tonight. Doing so, you would park on the even side from midnight to 3 p.m. during a snow emergency declaration. So why the long duration? It was 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Now we're making it longer. And that's to allow, again, Alderperson Grisham and Alderperson Kuhn and our city attorney. It's making it a little bit easier for us. So on the other side where you have legal parking, you'll have a lot of snow there that we'll do a replow and try to move that snow out. So that's the good thing. We try to get to, throughout the city during that time. Sometimes we don't, but we try our best. So these are some of the pictures that we have where we have narrow streets. In doing so, it's just kind of Here's a front end loader, which the individual actually raised the front end loader, the blade, to get through. If you have a dump truck or a refuse packer, you will not be able to do that, but you'll have to back out. Some of the common questions that we receive: do we plow and salt all the city streets? That depends on if we have a light snow or just sleet. Usually what we do with the main thoroughfares, we will do for the residential and alleys. It's just our priority is emergency thoroughfares first, and then the residential and alleys thereafter. Will the snowplow ever completely clear my residential street down to bare pavement? Again, once we get done with the main thoroughfares, usually with the high traffic areas in residential areas, and based on the temperature, if it's below freezing, usually it may be compacted where it created a bond to the road surface, so it's kind of hard to promise that, but we attempt that. Our goal is to make sure that it's drivable. Why is my street always plowed last? Well, sadly, we always have to have a beginning and an end. In doing that, believe it or not, there is some strategy where we try to have right-hand turns throughout the plow route. We don't want to turn left and cross traffic because it would delay and cause, potential accidents and that sort of thing, so. I only have on-street parking. Why do you always plow against my vehicle? Well, we start from the center and plow to the curb or to a driveway. We try to clear to the terrace area. Sometimes streets, Lincoln Avenue does not have much of a terrace area. So we do have to remove that snow, and if there is a parked vehicle there, obviously the snow will have a windrow against it. As mentioned, if you do have available driveways, garages, alternative parking means, please do so. The less vehicles that are parked on residential streets, it's just more efficient for us. What can I do about snow plows that block my driveway and with snow? Well, again, that's part of the process. When you do plow, it is going and it is directed towards the curb. Anytime you have an open curb or a driveway approach, the snow is going to seek the less resistance and pile in that area. We do attempt to turn our blade once we approach a driveway approach, and try to minimize that. But again, if you have a parked vehicle prior to that driveway approach, you're going to have more accumulation of snow that can be deposited into the driveway. So again, neighbors have to talk, they have to get to know each other, they have to remind people that, hey, should you be parking there? Do you realize it could result in this? So what can patrons do? Some of the tips is sign up for, on the city website, for any type of snow emergency updates, social media. We usually try to update with our plans and where we're at with the plowing operation. Again, if you can keep the vehicles, try to put them off-street parking into your driveways or garages, so on and so forth. Shovel snow if you're facing downward, towards the street. Pile the snow downward, with the plow, and how it won't go back into your driveway approach. Get to know your neighbors, remind them, seek help for those that are elderly and disabled. We receive many, many, many requests, and I feel bad for them. But we can't go to each and every resident, so we need your help. The people in West Allis, where they have neighbors, they're elderly and they just don't have the capacity to remove the snow, especially the high moisture snow, the heavy snow. Try to be patient. We cannot get throughout the whole city within an hour or 2 hours. Usually a full plow operation will take 6 to 8 hours depending on the amount of snow that we receive, but we're always trying to improve on that. Requirements, always remember the emergency parking rules that we discussed here tonight. Main thoroughfares, when it's declared, obviously, there's no parking, and then, parking in the residential areas requirements. Sidewalks, make sure that you clear your sidewalks within 24 hours. Do not project, any type of snow onto your neighbor's lot or in the alleys where you're depositing in another neighbor's area, or back onto the right of way or the street. Once they do that, it looks like we didn't plow, and we don't need that, but it does create other hazards. So, again, by the time we get back for replowing, it could be a day or a day and a half, before we can address that. So, make sure you clear snow and ice around your refuse and recycling containers so staff can remove it and service it. Talk to your neighbors, you know, the one person that has the fire hydrant in front of their property kinda has the responsibility of clearing it, help them out. As a neighborhood, you know, every now and then assist that person or that property of clearing the fire hydrant, so it's not too much of a burden on that family or that couple or that resident, so here you see some pictures of the most recent storm. You can kind of see that intersection where the plow driver is coming up to the intersection, it's somewhat narrow. We gotta remove some trees, or it's the same picture, but, that was kind of fun, but we had a fleet mechanic that was available, that came out and did ran the excavator. So I'm very proud to say of the cross-training that we do. We have water division, forestry, electrical, anybody that's available, plow, salt, or what have you. So of the 110, this last, operation, we had 83 people, apply, you know, addressing that storm, so.
Mr. President?
Alderman Stefanski.
So, a couple questions. If we have a resident or residents that are blowing snow on back onto the street, will they get fined? Is there a fine for that?
So you can call the Public Works, general number, and a supervisor will go out there directly and forewarn that individual, you know, what they're doing. In some cases, the non-emergency number of the police department, and I don't want to speak for the police department, but when they have time, they have helped us out with illegal parked cars and with these measures of, you know, blowing snow on the neighbor or the city's right away. But again, we don't get one or two. We get a lot of those, you know, during a snowstorm. So we try to address them, but with the help of the police department, they've been great, addressing that with us.
And then I saw a number of times, well, this last storm, we obviously had more of a problem because it froze almost right away after the snow stopped.
Yeah.
So it made it very impossible to do a proper plowing job, so. And I wanna say thank you to you for responding to the people who you did respond to for me, cause I didn't get any call back saying they never did it for me.
Oh, good.
So it was all covered, so thank you on that. But I still think we need to address something with parking and people continuously parking illegally. I don't know what we can do, but it seems to be an issue again, so.
And again, when I was out there, I did see vehicles being ticketed, I did see vehicles being towed. It's a matter of, and again, I don't wanna speak on your behalf, the police department capacity, availability of the contractor, of having the necessary vehicles available, but also having the space, but also, you know, going to these different locations. But the police department, I know, did write citations to address those areas. But it's time consuming.
Exactly.
You know, and in the meanwhile, we're waiting, you know.
And it
but-
could be taking them away from something
Yeah.
else.
But again, I don't wanna say, you know, improvement. We need improvement, I admit that. We are plowing too far away from the radius, the curb radius, but also the curbs. And that's a teaching moment where we are going back. We do have video now that we're using, where we can go back to the operator now and review some of the route and say, here's an instance where You need to, have the blade hit the curb and the radius. But again, with your understanding that there's certain vehicles that the turning radius is limited if you're in a refuse packer, recycling packer. So then, after this large storm, we had the dump trucks come in, we had those all-terrain, vehicles go in and try to address, those areas, but.
Mr.
not,
President?
You know,
Alderwoman Grisham.
I'm gonna circle the drain here and go back to, enforcement. First, I do wanna thank you, Dave, and the whole department. You guys did a bang-up job. You had a lot of challenges. It wasn't easy taking calls from us as alders as well, stomping our feet on things too. What I'm hearing as a common theme is a multitude of things. And we've tried to combat this in my 3.5 years, with the lack of, not enforcement, but residents participating in this cleanup. Meaning parking smart, training their brains, and abiding by our ordinances. Alderwoman Keene and I worked diligently that first year to put that ordinance together to help the department and to help the city. And if anybody looks at that it wasn't successful, it mirrored exactly what the snow emergency is. However, we didn't invest the money that we would need for signage. And that was, I think, the critical downfall. Going back to this continued issue, I think the only way we're really gonna look at improving this is either we're gonna have to look at investing in some sort of system, whether it be no parking or putting that into an ordinance from December through March, because those are our critical months. I don't know if you agree with me. I think that your fall cleanups are good with city services. I don't think there's that much of a problem. It's this winter window. I would like us to at least consider that going forward. We have to come up with a plan. We can't keep knocking the department, the police department, for saying, hey, you're not doing your job. They have 3 parking control officers. They have a multitude of responsibilities that they're taking on during storms too. They can't be out there 100% of the time ticketing cars. But I do believe if we have consistency and maybe some more resource for enforcement, whether that falls back with a combination effort between DPW and PD, that maybe once those wallets are hit consistently, people will wake up. Because I do see it primarily as being a people problem. You're right, Dave. Get to know your neighbors. I coordinate on my block. Not everybody's always happy about it, but it makes sense. With a growing number of vehicles in the city, and I know we have different forms of transportation, you got 3 to 5 vehicles per household, with a garage that's packed with your, as a storage locker. They're not using it. So, without carrying on too long, I think that's something that we should think about going forward. I think with this beautiful new DPW that we're building, that it might be something wise to at least consider and look at the logistics that would be involved in maybe creating a parking enforcement division. I don't want to go too far off topic, but I really do think that I'd love to hear your feedback, because what I'm seeing is you've got this operation, you've got the experience behind it, Dave. I think you do a fantastic job with what you have to work with. But I really see enforcement as being an issue, and these obstructions, I think you can be much more efficient. It's just common sense. If you have a clear roadway to work with, and people are following the laws and the rules, you can be a heck of a lot more efficient. So that's pretty much what I have for now.
Gail, I have a question. What is the fine for parking illegally during a snowstorm, and are we at the maximum?
I believe we went through this a couple of years ago where it was maxed out. The fine right now, let's see.
Yeah, I think we took it to the max for everything across the board.
I thought you did.
Oh, we absolutely did.
So it's $40 for the first violation, and it can be $100 for the second and subsequent violation.
Which is a reduction. You lowered it to 40, it used to be 50.
It had to be in order to get that 100 on the second one, because that was repeat
I'm
violation.
not quite sure how many people, I'd be lying if I told you how many people have gotten, if I gave you a number. I don't think most people are gonna get a second and subsequent, because the reality is you'd have to look back to figure out if they got a parking ticket. And the reality, and the
Right.
cops don't have the ability to look back to see if that, we don't even have access to that program to see if they've been cited for it, so.
It makes sense to
we
raise it
wouldn't
then.
even- We wouldn't even know it. We always issue a first offense, and it's a matter of volume.
Right,
So, when you want us to sit down, you can hammer away on me,
okay, thank you.
so.
So then, in reality, the $100 fine for second offense is meaningless.
Yep,
It's on the books. If the technology catches up where it can be used, it's ready to go.
So what do we need to get you for technology?
I don't know if it's a matter of technology, it's a matter of, the police officers don't have access to that program system to know whether it is a first offense or a second. Our general Phoenix, the RMS system that we use, doesn't incorporate parking citations. It's a whole different program, which isn't in their squads, which, like I said, I don't know if we'd want an officer looking up every ticket, I mean, like I said, I'll share the numbers. You want me to sit down?
I think it would ultimately, it's more of a labor intensive
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
You'd be slowing, to get the second subsequent, to find out those cars, we'd probably ultimately be slowing down writing the amount of citations we would over the course of an evening.
Yeah.
President, so when we went through the updates, the reason it's on there again is because it's an option and it's something that's out there. But I also would not recommend that officers go through any actual laborious effort to look up a second. That would be very inefficient. The best thing you can do is come up with a system where it would be instantly available to them if it was a second or not. I don't know if that technology exists. But it is on the books and it's ready in case there is some sort of program or system out there like that.
And Mr. President, if I may, I would rather see our officers out there doing what they're paid to do and not be parking checkers. So that's one of the things, that I look at as far as resource, because what we try to explain to those that are frustrated with the parking regulations or the lack of what they feel is enforcement. We've got what, 3 PCOs, I believe now? Right.
Yes, right now
And
we have 2.
that's parking control officers that are out there. But I'm not even sure the shifts that they run, to be honest with you. I mean, if you're doing a snowstorm, you're tasked with all these other things, all these emergencies that are going on. You can't be out there necessarily to be writing the tickets as much as would be needed.
You can fill in with any stats. So we do have an overnight parking control officer, and when a storm comes up like this, emphasis is put on officers to go out and write citations. Generally, one of the things that that comes along with the storm is we do see a reduction in some of the other calls, so they do have the effort, the time to do some of that. And I know one of the Alderman Rote was out doing a ride along during the storm and saw them doing that. And we do also kind of try to see if we're going to bring in other officers on overtime to do that. That's kind of a balancing act, because our main goal is to make sure that we get the streets cleared for DPW to be able to go through. And we were at a point where bringing in other officers would have created more tickets issued, but probably would not have made their plowing operations any more efficient, because the tow companies simply couldn't keep up with the amount of tows that were out there. And I know Captain Clemente had pulled the numbers for how many citations the parking control officers and the officers wrote during that last snowstorm. And I don't know if you wanted to throw that out, Todd.
We wrote, for the snow emergency citations alone, we wrote 260 snow emergency tickets during the course of that 3 days or 2 days. Along with another 21 overnight parking violations and wrong siders, for a total of 283 tickets during that short period of time. We called for 292 tows, and we verified that we know that 41 of those were towed. The reality is we sent such a volume to NNS Towing. Literally at one point, we sent them a 4-page document that encompassed about 75 tows at one time. There's no tow company that can keep up with the volume to try to do with it. So regardless of how many tickets we write or the bite into them, potentially, if nobody adheres to it up front, we're just going to be papering more people with a higher fine amount. Maybe that'll get them to move. I don't know. I don't know if that's the idea. But I don't believe there's a capacity to tow any more cars any faster, especially when it's in the midst of the storm. The biggest thing that we try to do is I try to work closely with Tim Last and Mike Brothka and Dave to try to figure out where they're gonna be, we can go ticket in one side of the city, and they're working on another. So the goal is to try to figure out where they're going, so we can be ahead of them to ticket and tow. But then again, once again, we get to the same problem. We can ticket them and call for the tows, but we're just at the mercy of how quickly the tows can get through. And that's typically what we try to do is, on the main thoroughfares, we hit those as much as you can right away. And usually those are fairly clear, I think, for the most part. In my 27 years here, we've typically been able to clear the main thoroughfares pretty quick, because everybody knows there's no parking at all, so it's an easy one. It's the side streets that become trickier, because people don't move their cars, or they forget about it, or whatever it is their reasoning is. They just don't do anything with them, and we're stuck trying to figure it out later. Your ordinance that you created works from the standpoint that it allows us to go as the days go on for like day 2, once they're done with the initial cleanup on the main streets and they go through and they'll try, it gives us the opportunity to ticket and tow cars right off the start without having to do them as an abandoned vehicle, because that's what we have to do after the snows, after the declaration is gone, has subsided, is we have to do things in a little more, it takes us a little longer to get some of the other things done. So there is a good part to having that thing. The continuation of it being from midnight till 3 in the afternoon, it works. I will say that I know you guys took a beating last year for it on social media, but the reality is it made sense. It allowed me to do my job better leading up to things, because I could ticket and tow your car for a violation whether there was snow on the ground or not. That was the beauty of the rule. So as we knew things were ramping up, I didn't need to wait for Dave to declare a snow emergency. If things were problematic for us, if there was another reason, as far as when snow was coming, or if it was icy, or we just had a buildup of cars even after the snow emergency, we could ticket and tow. And I would set up my time saying, what's part of the city are you going to Dave's people? What part are you gonna do? All right, I would call NNS, I would tell them, I need you to get a driver on extra. We're gonna be setting up, and I would send an officer, in this case, many times a parking control officer might come in extra from midnight on, and they would just literally focus on trying to clear up the streets so they could clear up the days after. So, I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed when it disappeared. And that makes it even more confusing now if you decide to bring something back. It's gonna be another hurdle of back and forth and back and forth.
And Mr. President, if I may say, that's why I'm visiting this conversation, that if we were to revert back to that, because I know it made sense. We studied it long enough and really took a deep dive before we jumped in and made that ordinance change. We need signage. So if that really was beneficial, and you work in tandem like that, then why won't we consider bringing that back and look into what the cost of the signage that's required, and put it back on the book? Because that was really the confusion. It's like, you come to visit the city, there's no sign there, what do you mean I got a ticket? Well, you visit a city, you should know their laws and ordinance. I agree, it really angered quite a few people. But I think over time, just like Dana and I had said, or Alderwoman Keene and I had said, give it a chance. Let's see how this works. Everybody just came out on fire about it, so food for thought going forward if we did decide to try to tackle this collectively.
Alderman Stefanski.
Do we only work with NNS?
Yes,
Why is that?
that's where our contract is through.
So my question is, I've had a couple tow companies in the area reach out to me and say, how do we get to be a tow company for the city?
You'd have to bid the contract.
And
So
I
we don't
said-
have anything to do with
Yeah,
that, that
Mr.
goes to their purchasing.
Yeah.
Last time, I don't think anyone else, Rebecca can speak to it. Did we only have one other tow company
bid.
put in a bid? Or was it only just NNS?
only
I thought
NNS.
was the only one who bid, so
There
guess
was-
who won?
There was another one though that did say they did bid on it, and they did not get contacted.
I think a lot of the challenges are people don't have the capacity capacity that we need.
Right.
But NNS doesn't have the capacity we need either.
They have more than everyone else.
No one does. No one has a capacity. When you're asking, there is not a single tow company, a singular tow company that I can think of that would have the capacity to take on 292 tows in a 2-day period. That's what we hit them with. It's just, nobody has the room, and that's, and I don't know, I know that we towed 41. The problem was is we would send them a list, and sometimes they'll send it back to us, but we had difficulty getting things back to them. So there may be more tows that were actually completed, but that volume of tows, and I said that's it was continuous. That, and I don't know of any singular tow company that could provide that. And I think it would be difficult to try to go to multiple tow companies to do, who's got, then it would be figure, well, who did you call for that car? Where's this car? Where's that car? You'd have to figure out where they all went, and trying to determine, because when somebody wants to know, when they call us, because they're gonna call us, my car's gone, we'd have to know, well, which company picked it up? Who did we call for that? And it might be even a bigger nightmare for the city to try to figure out who and where everything is versus the one tow company.
What if we had, when the new DPW facility is made, what if we had a location to take vehicles to?
I don't think,
Where would that be?
I don't know if the city, so, then you take on the liability of all the things that go with holding onto people's vehicles and things of that
Liability, you have to
nature.
have someone
You-
man
you-
that
yep, yeah,
tow
I mean,
station for 24 hours, you have to have the insurance that's going to cover it, you have to.
So, and
Yeah, we visited
even if
that
you,
one.
even if we had a holding facility, you still need the tow trucks to go pick them up, and it's, cause right now, NNS typically is taking from from whatever location in the city, and they take them up to, it's just off of Layton, around 108th and Layton, up in that area, that's where that's one of their tow lots. I think they might have another one, but, even if they only have so many trucks, so even if they have 10 trucks available, each tow takes 15, 20 minutes for them, to get it, maybe drive it up there, get back. It's a matter of volume. I mean, it may be a solution. Getting the people to follow the rules up front
That'd be great.
is so much simpler. And that doesn't cost the city any money to get somebody to follow the rules up front.
Right.
And Mr. President, if I may say, there was no real way of describing, people had a difficult time just adapting to what odd and even parking is. I mean, that's a disaster, so when we put that ordinance together, it was those that didn't do overnight parking that really couldn't, understand the concept. But yeah, we can't do a tow operation, but there are, and I just have to speak to this with NNS. NNS has 10 other contracts with other municipalities. So when we speak to trying to, find, where these vehicles are, if they can service 10 other municipalities, then maybe we need to look into how can we make it efficient where we can find multiple tow companies to combat the issue. And just find a way we can do that if we get the bids and we do an RFP on it.
I think the major issue is, how do we get people to get their cars off the streets?
Yep,
It's education. Obviously, we can't do it through fines. It would be nice if we could put out a $200 fine, and once a person got a fine like that, they'd wake up and they would pay attention. But we can't do that because state law prohibits us from that. So we have to do it through education. It's the only tool that we have. Maybe signage is the way to go.
I think it would have been very helpful, but we couldn't at that time really take that chance without piloting it to spend that amount of money. And I don't know if we would have had this, Dana and I would have had that support from the council at the time. But I think this is a growing problem,
Well, I
and we
think-
need to address it.
And I think if you're looking at doing signs, there's a lot of areas in the city where you don't need to put the signs in because people don't park on the streets. My neighborhood, Kevin's neighborhood, there's whole neighborhoods in the city where you don't have that issue. It's certain areas of town, the east end primarily, where, if you put signage there, where it would be less expensive than trying to do the whole city.
However, if I may, Mr. President, Kale, Attorney Decker, we went over the cost of that, and if you could tell us what the actual law on that is, Kale, If you remember, I think you said we had to put it on all the city streets.
Sure, so the city had a couple options. Last time through, we used the snow emergency laws to enact it citywide, where you don't have to put up any signs. That was the fastest way of doing it without incurring the cost of signage. The semantics of calling it a snow emergency, there's no snow on the ground, bothered some people. The other option is to simply put up signs, which you could do. It'd be a violation of the sign. You don't need to change the emergency regulations, but you would need a sign that's visible from the parking space for it to be enforceable. There'd be several signs per block facing both ways. So it would be a lot of signs.
Right, and I think if, to refresh everyone's memory, it was to the tune of a little over $400,000.
It's a lot of money to make signs.
So on the front end, does it make sense to invest something like that to combat the issue in the future? You know, that's why we thought to pilot it. But we weren't really given the opportunity to pilot it for very long. Right? You're done.
Mr. Chair.
I just enforce what you guys tell me.
Thank you for that.
You create
Just
it,
a-
we'll try to enforce it.
Just a quick
Alderwoman
question. Dave, do you schedule a certain time for crews to return to remove or clear the snow from the intersections? The snow on Walmer Road and National was so high, you couldn't see the cars coming from a different direction, crossing the intersection. It was very dangerous. Do you
Yes.
schedule a time for the crews to come back and take some of the snow away?
Yeah, so I believe what you're inquiring is the medians. When individuals go and they want to make a turn in the medians, front-end loaders in this case, they clear the medians and then they pile the snow. And then we do come back and it's on our checklist, not a priority, but once we do the cul-de-sacs, the safety islands, we remove that snow from the dead ends and the cul-de-sacs, then that is on the list as well. So yes, but it's,
I have to say thank you to you and your staff. Basically, I only had one call this last snowstorm, and it was a big snowstorm. So really, I think,
we got a good staff.
yes,
We really do, and, nobody in that operation called in sick, everybody was there, and it was multiple shifts. We asked people to do, multiple shifts and come back, in 12 hours later, and we got good participation. So kudos to them. That was not me, that was them.
no, I know, you have a wonderful
They're
staff.
awesome.
It's getting to be 7 o'clock, so
I move we adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Again, Dave. Stefanski here?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to call the Common Council to order. I will ask the clerk to call the roll to determine a quorum.
Alderperson Stefanski. Turner.
Here.
Vitale.
Excused.
Grisham. Here. Haas.
Here.
Keen. Here. Lysick.
Here.
Reinke. Here. Rote.
Here.
8 present, 1 excused.
We have a quorum. Please rise if you are able and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led this evening by Alderman Stefanski. Okay, we'll move to item D. We have one public hearing this evening, and I will ask the clerk to read it out.
Ordinance to amend zoning code related to certain animal services, rummage sales, and separation distance for narcotic treatment services.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to staff. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Steve Scher. I'm the Manager of Planning and Zoning. And our hearing tonight is 3 parts to this ordinance. The first part being animal services, increasing the opportunity within some commercial districts to allow certain animal-related uses. And the second part being rummage sales. Currently, there's a gap in the code with respect to rummage sales, so we're just filling that gap, and we'll get into that details later. And then narcotic treatment, just reconsidering the distance separation between similar uses and residential uses within the city. So the first part of animal services, we start out with definitions, expanding upon the definitions. Right now, the zoning code covers has a use for animal boarding, but the other uses are as described here are new within the code. So, but as far as animal boarding goes, the definition is basically sheltering for an owner's at the direction of an owner's direction an animal for compensation. And it excludes veterinary practices, so boarding overnight at a vet is a separate use within our code. Animal breeding, just basically mating or birth offspring for compensation. Animal shelters are nonprofit uses such as rescues, other nonprofit welfare types of societies where animals are boarded and sheltered and cared for. And then animal training is the use to teach animals and to react to specific person's commands for compensation. And then with respect to the allowance of uses within the code, this is the proposed table. Again, right now, our existing code, animal boarding is covered within our existing code, but it's only allowed as a conditional use in the light industrial zoning district and a permitted use in the I2, or heavier industrial district. So what we're doing here is expanding the allowance of limited use into some of the other commercial zoning districts like C3 and C4 with certain criteria down below. Animal breeding is not going to be allowed within our code. We're specifically calling that out here. It's none of these cells are populated. And animal shelters, that'd be the nonprofit types of welfare societies, are allowed as conditional uses in the industrial zoning districts. Animal training, again, expands into more of the commercial zoning districts and then also the allowance in the heavier industrial district. With respect to the limited use criteria, with respect to animal boarding and training, those types of uses in commercial zoning districts must take place indoors, and no noise from the activity is allowed to be audible from a lot used for residential purposes. The difference is in an industrial district, while animal boarding and training are allowed in industrial, the difference is that there could be an allowance for outdoor operations, but again, no noise from the activity being audible from a residential lot. And then the conditional use basically indicating for the animal shelters, noise from the activity may not be audible from a lot used for residential purposes. So those are the conditions that go along with that use table up above. The second part of the ordinance for rummage sales, again, the gap in the code, we're filling that gap, basically allowing rummage sales within the majority of our zoning districts, and then defining rummage sales as the sale of a tangible good or goods from a lot used for residential purposes. And it's within a calendar year, you're limited to a certain nominal, not to exceed dollar amount, but more importantly, the more enforceable part of that, the easier to enforce part of that is that not more than 5 days. It doesn't have to be consecutive days, that could be sporadic days throughout the year. And then part 3 for narcotic treatment, the third part of the ordinance, we currently have our existing rule within the ordinance now is that such uses are allowed in the commercial C4 and then both industrial districts as a limited use. There's a separation clause or a separations distance from lots that are zoned residential or with residential purpose. Lots zoned P for park, schools, or other narcotic treatment services. So you have to have that, currently you have to have that 250-foot separation between this criteria. The intent of the new, and that's what the map currently looks like. If you were looking at the existing regulation, the orange spots here, the orange areas are where one could locate another narcotic treatment service based on the 250-foot separation from residential, parks, schools, and other services. The stars are the other narcotic treatment establishments, Highway 100 National, and then on Theo Trekker, just west of Highway 100, between 116th. And then, so the intent of the new ordinance is to more or less keep the allowance within the same commercial and industrial districts, however, increase the separation from 250 to 1,000 feet. And we feel that this would better balance such uses within the metro area. And then also the ordinance doesn't specifically eliminate all possibility of uses within the city with the 1,000-foot separator. It does reduce the number of eligible locations within the city, but there are still about a dozen or so properties on the north end of the city where such uses could locate. So the Plan Commission has reviewed this ordinance and they recommended approval. Common Council tonight at public hearing, and then the ordinance has been published and we've received no objections to date. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Scher. Are there any questions from the members of the Common Council on our public hearing?
Mr. Mayor?
Alderperson Keene.
Steve, does this include pet shops that sell animals, cats, birds, dogs?
As long as they're not breeding animals from that location, they'd be fine, but a pet shop or a pet store would be an allowed use, like a retail use.
Thank you.
As long as they're not violating these other, regulations.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the council?
Mayor Devine.
Alderperson Reiki.
Steve, in the, let's see, the 5 consecutive days for rummage sales, or are they 5 times a year?
5 times a year.
5 times a year they can hold them.
Yeah. 5 days in a year, in a calendar year, that you could hold a rummage sale.
But 5 days, they can do it for 5 times.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's why I want clarification, because sometimes there's a problem.
Understood, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council?
Mayor Devine?
Alderperson Grisham.
Going back to the 5 days, that would be if somebody held a rummage sale, it's Thursday through Sunday, those counts as days, not an event, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, are there any questions from the members of the audience? Okay, seeing none, we will close our public hearing and we will move on to item E. This is public participation where the council may receive information from members of the public during this 30-minute period. Each speaker must announce their name and address to the council, sign in at the podium, and limit their comments to one statement of no more than 5 minutes. Does anybody wish to address the council under public participation this evening?
Hi, good evening. Amy Rose Murphy, 1520 South 76th Street. I sent an email earlier to Rebecca and Dan, and I just wanted to read it to the entire council. I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to express my concerns regarding the limited hours of our City Hall lobby, which has been in effect for an extended period. As an engaged member of our community, I believe it is crucial to reevaluate and consider returning to a more standard 8 to 5 business day schedule. With the upcoming spring election, it is important to address this matter promptly. The limited hours create challenges for residents who may need to vote in person early or cast their ballots through absentee voting. I am concerned that these restrictive hours may hinder citizens who prefer in-person voting from exercising this option. The community's frustration is evident when the conversation turns to present limited hours at City Hall. Numerous residents have expressed their dissatisfaction with the continued change of a typical operating hours. Returning to the standard 8 to 5 schedule would not only meet the pressing requirements tied to the upcoming election, but also contribute to increased overall satisfaction within our community. I respectfully urge the Common Council to thoroughly consider and implement the necessary measures to reinstate the customary business hours at City Hall in the lobby. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to address the council under public participation this evening? Oh, could you turn your microphone on, please? Thanks.
Okay. My name is Tiffany Stark. My address is 6414 West Burnham Street. I am a West Allis resident for life. I am also an acute mental health social worker, and I'm here before you to discuss my concerns with Granite Hills. I was at all of the meetings from day one when this facility was up in the zoning committee, and I was in support of Granite Hills. Our community is in need of mental health services, and there was a lot of things that were brought up once the community had a say. There was concerns that they did not want Granite Hills to be the community hospital or the county hospital since it closed. And they also were very concerned about discharge planning, that people were not going to be discharged into the street. So one of the issues I think was very well, brought up, that people knew that Granite Hills was going to be a partnership in the community taking people that needed a bed, which we all, I thought, knew. But word on the street, a lot of people in Milwaukee County are very upset, and they did not get that memo. They feel that Granite Hills should be the county hospital, which I disagree. I do agree that it should be a community partnership, but there's some misconceptions from what I hear. Also, the other big issue is lack of beds. One of the issues, I never heard when we were discussing this that a facility would not have a psych unit. All the psych units that I am familiar with all have restraints and seclusions, and that is a last resort, but it's necessary. It's necessary for 3 reasons. One, when someone's psychotic and they're not doing well, they can be a danger to themselves and be hurt. Also, other patients can be hurt, and staff. And the issue is, Granite Hills, for some reason, does not have a restraint and inclusion room. And one of the reasons why people do not, well, they don't have beds, they don't have staff. People are afraid to work there. And that is a big issue. And like I said, I've never heard of a psych facility. I work on an inpatient psych unit that does not have that. I don't know why they don't, but it's a big factor of why people aren't being able to become employed. They don't want, they're afraid. So that's the reason why there's a lack of also bed availability. Also, back to the discharge planning. I know when we had sat there and you guys made the vote, I thought there was some kind of provision that was put forth that there could be a permit pulled if some of these measures weren't being met. I can't speak on specifics because of a HIPAA, but I do know that there's been very poor discharge planning, especially when vulnerable populations have case managers in the community, and Granite Hills is not coordinating with these case managers for a smooth transition, where people are being discharged to the street, or especially when it was very cold and people can get frostbite and people are being discharged. with case managers and letting them know at the last moment in the day that they're going to discharge the patient, when they could have coordinated that with their case manager to be more safe and more continuity of care. So I'm very disappointed. I have I was very excited about Granite Hills, and I think there's a lot that can still happen, but there's a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't know what is going on. And we need to look at this because, there is vulnerable people, and we need to make sure they're safe, especially when we had that Arctic air and people were left out in the cold and people get frostbite. And so I just hope you guys hear this, and I appreciate you guys listening, but I hope there's something that you guys can do to look into some of these things, find out why there's not a restraint and seclusion room, to increase staff, to increase beds, to get the people help, because there's people that need mental health treatment and they don't have a place to go because there's no beds. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Does anybody else? Answer my own question.
Hi, Chad Helverson, 1028 South 77th Street. Just wanted to say thank you to the current committee. You guys have been doing a great job leading us the past 4 years. I want to thank the city, all the workers, maintenance, police, fire. You guys are awesome. I've lived here for 11 years now. I had a community where I came from, which is Kenosha, but I never knew community until I sowed my roots here. And that's why I'm running for alderman for District 2. I really like what this city has done in the time I've been here. I know the history of the city too, and kind of how we're, scrappy young fighters and we come out of the dirt and, whatever people say of us, we're awesome. I love this frickin' city. I believe in public safety. I believe in, traffic calming, all these things to, make that kid have a better future here. That's why I'm running for alder. So, yeah, Chad Helverson, vote the number 4, chadwi.com, and thank you, council.
Thanks for your comments. Does anybody else wish to address the council under public participation? Yes, just once. There you go.
Okay, thanks. I'm Doug Gendron. I live at 2261 South 60th Street, and it's on the block which also has Longfellow Schools building. And I was here talking last month about the subject of the redevelopment of Longfellow School, and I appreciate the chance to bring it up again. The plan that was offered to us was rather sketchy, limited in details. They were talking about building a new building, an 8 multifamily unit building along 61st Street, in addition to converting Longfellow School to apartments, and also the small building along Grant that was a more recent vintage into apartments. And I think the total number of apartments proposed was 51. And one of the other citizens brought up the fact that they're only showing 45 parking places on the property. The planner who presented some information to us explained that by saying that not everybody drives a car, which is true. Some people have 2 cars in the family, though, and I think it's safe to suppose that there will be at least 50 cars in that property. Probably, if they're all parking on the property, probably more like 60 cars, which would then require some of the overflow to go on neighboring streets. They were showing a couple of driveways, one on 60th Street and one on 61st Street. And the drawing didn't show whether or not they'd be using the alley that runs north-south from the school property to the east-west alley that runs between 60th and 61st Street. I suspect that that is in the, well, if not in plans currently, that is in the future if this development goes through as planned. There was somebody at the meeting also who said she knows a better use of an old building like Longfellow School. And I think that some of the people who live on that block would be willing to at least hear the city's plans, see a more thorough development of the plan before the city goes forward with it. And at least be offered the opportunity to vote yes or no, or at least to offer their own suggestions for what possibly could be good modifications to the plan that you have already. The planner said that the developer thinks that in order to make this profitable, they need to build that 8-unit apartment, multifamily apartment building there along 61st Street. This despite the fact that to remodel the school and make it habitable for people, that they would be receiving funds having to do with, and forgive me, I don't know for sure, it might have been historic preservation as well as low-income housing. And yet, despite the fact that they'll receive that money and, of course, profits from those operations or the sale of them, they still need to build another 8-unit apartment building along 61st Street. That is at least questionable and ought to be supported by some kind of data. If the city has it, I think it would be well to share it with us. Also, this project seems pretty far along in the proposition stage without having had a traffic study that shows how this is going to affect traffic on 60th Street and 61st Street. The driveway in and out off of and onto 60th Street was proposed apparently as a right turn in, right turn out only. That requires some kind of a design that discourages people from sitting on 60th Street trying to turn left into that development. I don't know how that's going to affect pedestrian travel in that area also, but at least it's going to take up more parking places from 60th Street for the purpose of that driveway. And similarly, the driveway on 61st Street will take up some parking places. And in order to accommodate extra traffic on 61st Street, it seems like parking would have to be restricted to one side of the street only. It could be that you could cut out on one side, say on the east side of 61st Street, you could cut out the grassy area between the sidewalk and the curb, cut down all those trees, and
Sir, you're at your 5-minute limit, so if you can kind of conclude your comments, please.
okay. Thanks. Well, as you can see, I'm against the idea of overcrowding that property. And furthermore, being a resident nearby, I would like to ask you to review with the people who were there last week, some of whom didn't express an opinion, what are you doing and why? And also, I'd like to see some green space there. I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to say, but I appreciate the extension, and thanks for listening to me tonight.
Thanks very much. Does anybody else wish to address the council under public participation?
Still on, all right. Good evening, council. Sagar Tolani, 7059 West Stouth Place in the beautiful 4th District. I just want to thank Alderman Lysich for his 40-plus years of service on the council and also as the president, and just wanted to introduce myself. I've lived in West Allis for about 8 years with my wife when we accidentally happened to buy a house from my mother-in-law's childhood friends' kids who were selling their house to move to other cities for jobs and then ended up in Shorewood. But We were very fortunate to end up at that house, a beautiful colonial on that block, and we've loved West Allis so much that by the end of this year, my mom will be moving here. And I was really hoping to put her at the complex by Longfellow, but we'll see about that. So in the meantime, I've loved this city, love everything we're doing, and want to be part of moving this city forward. I've had the pleasure of being on the Capital Improvements Committee and doing a lot of the work, updating our website, being on the Focus Committee to get our new logo, make our city look more modern, and I would love an opportunity to talk to our citizens and serve you on the Common Council. So again, Sagar Tolani, vote the number 4 Tolani, Tolani @gmail.com is my address. So thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Does anybody else wish to address the council under public participation? All right, seeing none, we will close public participation, and we will, let me stop my timer here. Item F is our standing committees. They will be meeting during recess. If you are here for a license or a permit or something that summoned you here for city business, please take a look at the bottom of page 1 or ask one of us when we break for recess on which room you should go to when we break. Yes, Alderman Haas.
Right, and just, again, the Administration Committee and Economic Development are here in council chambers.
Yes.
Yeah, just because that's different.
Thank you. Moving on to item G, the mayor's report. Just a couple things I want to touch on since we last met. A few weeks ago, our city engineer, Melinda, and I were at Irving Elementary talking to students about traffic safety. One of their classmates, unfortunately, was hit by a vehicle last year on 84th and National by the skateboard park. And we were talking with them with going over all of their ideas, how we could make that intersection safer. So I want to thank Irving for that opportunity and thank all the students that wrote me letters. The other thing I want to mention is last Monday, the West Allis Police Department had their community partnership meeting here in the chambers. I want to thank everybody who attended and thank the department for putting that on. Pretty much everybody sitting up here was there. Last Friday, the West Allis Women's Club held their Queen for a Day luncheon where we got to serve them lunch and pamper them. We were at Mount Hope Lutheran Church and took care of them. I know we always like serving Alderperson Ranke as a member of the Women's Club, and then our other alderwomen were actually serving, not getting pampered, so maybe they can stagger that next year and be pampered instead of serving. But that's always a fun event. I want to thank the Women's Club not only for that event, but also for everything that they do for the community. Earlier today, I had a coffee with the mayor listening session. Some of you may have seen on the news that two of our local businesses actually were hit by a vehicle at 2:50 in the morning, a hit and run, and it caused around $50,000 worth of damage on 68th and Lincoln, Piece of Love Bakery, and then the Anthony's Appliance store next door. Both are getting renovated, so I know it's a lot easier to buy a cup of coffee or a cake than it is a new appliance, but if anybody is in need of an appliance, I'm sure they would love to see your business. They are both great community partners and community small businesses. Two other minor things. I just want to take a minute to recognize and mention that February is Black History Month and remind everybody. And then I also want to announce that earlier today, a lot of you may have seen on social media, but that long-awaited demolition of the Burger King has begun, and it might be done by now. So that does conclude the mayor's report. Move to item H. Are there any reports from the alderpersons?
Mayor Devine.
Alderwoman Keene.
Friends of a Follett Park will be holding their annual Empty Bowls event on Saturday, February 17th from 3 to 6 p.m. They ask that you also bring a non-perishable food item
All proceeds and food collected will go to West Allis food pantries. It is a awesomely delicious event with probably about 9 different types of soups that you can pick out. You're gonna have baked goods there. The West Allis, West Milwaukee Kids Symphony is gonna be there to play some delightful background music while we enjoy our soup. So if you can make it, it's a great cause, and urge you to show up.
Thank you. Any other reports from the alderpersons?
Mayor Devine? Oh, that was a tie. Go ahead. I just want to acknowledge that our Alderwoman Dana Keene has a birthday, but it's not on our timeline, and we won't be meeting before that, so I just want to wish her a very happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Turner?
And I want to give you the opportunity, usually Marty does this for you, but I'll do it myself. I just wanted to show about the listing in the Milwaukee Business Journal, which you announced, showing that this is one of the Milwaukee area's best markets for first-time home buyers. So I think that's a good thing for West Allis, and showing that we are a good place to live and to bring our families up.
So now that Alderman Weigel's gone, you're going to be picking that up? All right, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was a Realtor.com study that came up with those results. Yeah. Any other alderpersons report?
Mayor Devine.
Alderperson Reinke.
As chair of the Board of Health, I want to share with everyone that the West Allis Health Department has received a special congratulatory letter from the state, the Department of Health Services, congratulating our health department on attaining a level 3 health department. A level 3 health department is the highest one can go in this state. So I have to thank our director, Bob Leisha, and also his staff, and also the Board of Health for basically helping to attain this special award. I thank him for all his work, and his staff do a marvelous job. And I think I'm a little prejudiced on this, but we're one of the unsung heroes in West Allis, as far as I'm concerned, because we're helping our community to be safe and well. And really, this is a special accomplishment for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alderperson Reinke. Any other reports from the alderpersons?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
I move for approval of the minutes of the January 16th, 2024 Common Council meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I think we're going Grisham by a hair. Any corrections or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, the minutes are approved. Then we have nothing under standing committee reports.
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
Relative to the consent agenda, is there any alderperson that would like any item on the consent agenda acted upon separately? Seeing none, I would move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second by Alderwoman Keene. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
I move that we stand in recess until conclusion of the committee meetings.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in recess.
All right, the administration committee will come to order. Thank you, everybody. Usually we have our committee meetings downstairs, but there's an issue in the art gallery currently, so that's why we're having our committee meetings up here in the council chambers. Yeah, the committee is in order. All three members are present except for Alderman Vitale, who is excused, and the former Alderman Weigel is present, but he doesn't count. All right. Item 27 is a resolution to establish a multiple municipal local health department called the Southwest Suburban Health Department, jointly with the City of Greenfield. And I want to start off by saying I think everybody is very desirous of making this happen. Consolidation with other municipal entities is something that has been a goal of all of us to work together cooperatively to provide services and save money. But now we're hitting into some of the details. And yeah, Jason Kazmarek, if you could talk to us about any concerns that you might have, and give us a bit of a background also about everything that's going on here, please.
Sure. Could probably leave Kale to a little bit more of the background, but from the financial side of things, I appreciate that you let me come up here and speak to that. I do have a concern with this current contract. With that in mind, like you just said, I know that council is genuinely wanting to move forward with a partnership with the City of Greenfield. And I understand that in the short term, there's going to be some give, by both sides. But I do have a concern with this contract for the long term. And what I'm getting at is the funding mechanism for it. So each city is going to have to fund based on a percentage on an annual basis. And the way that the contract is written currently is that it's based on the 2024 budget. So based on that split right now, and then going forward, that's how we would divvy up the bill. The problem with that allocation is that the budgets, while they're similar, they're not entirely comparable. So the level of service that the City of West Allis provides per person is quite a bit higher than the level of service that Greenfield provides per person. So if you think about the long-term play, we're going to have one health department that provides essentially the same service to residents here and residents in Greenfield. And in my mind, in the long term, the best way to allocate this is based on population, because each person is going to get that same fair share of having that service. So I think the way that it's set up right now, long term, the City of West Allis would be paying an unfair share of the bill. And I would love to see, I know you can't go directly to straight population billing because then Greenfield's not going to afford it. But I would love to see a mechanism where we're going towards that off into the future. And Kale, I don't know if you have any additional comments, but.
Sure. So we have a draft that we're working on right now for this agreement, but there are still a few more provisions that we need to work out. So I would ask that this committee not adopt anything tonight, just because we want to work out those final details. And then what Jason brings up is something that I would just want more just informal direction from the committee. If that is a funding mechanism that the committee finds to be appropriate, going by population rather than just the static ratios of current budgets, I'd be happy to try to implement that. The agreement itself right now is proposed to go on for a minimum of 5 years. And so over that 5-year span, there might be a way to incorporate the population-based financing structure incrementally. That way it's not too harsh at any one point in time. We're working toward that goal, but it also is not going to significantly negatively affect either community because we're already budgeted for it. So that might be an option if the committee is interested in doing that, and I could try to develop some way of doing that in the contract.
Right, Kale, and to answer that, right, or some sort of formula that takes both into account, so that it's a little unfair to Greenfield and a little unfair to West Allis, and then we have a happy medium. I think that would even be appropriate. We're not looking for the perfect deal. This isn't, you know, we have to win or anything. We know that we're going to work together with Greenfield. I think that it doesn't have to be perfect in order to get to a yes, but these, and Jason, thank you for bringing this to everyone's attention. This does have to be addressed.
And in this process, we're happy to come up with different options or formulas to present to the committee in the future. But again, with that 5-year minimum time, as we work toward eventually getting whatever both parties can agree to, the idea would be there's going to be some savings in the budget overall. So that should also lessen the impact of whatever shifting has to occur over the next 5 years. And any new organization, there's going to be growing pains, but the idea would be efficiencies. I mean, through attrition, there might be opportunities there as well with less staffing. You're going to get less administration. A lot of advantages, and I think after 5 years, there should be, we would want to have the financing structure set up for the foreseeable future going forward.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I even if we had a plan ready to go, I wouldn't want to act on this tonight. This is a big deal. I want our council to be able to digest this, think about it for a little bit, if you will. But yeah, so we'll hold this item and we'll wait to hear back from staff at the next council meeting then. All right, thank you. That's item 27. Item 20.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could we maybe look to have because I see that there's an item under public safety for this, to potentially have a committee of whole meeting on it and talk about the different options?
If the council president wishes to call a committee of the whole, we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Do that. That's fine. Yep, good idea. That makes sense. Okay, and then, yeah, anything else before we move on? All right, item 28, January 30th, 2024 Administration Committee minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And I'll take items 29 and 30 together. The appointment of Jenny Kosick for the position of Marketing and Communications Director, and the resolution to approve the employment contract for the position of Marketing and Communications Director for Jenny Kosick. I don't see Jenny here.
Move for
right?
approval.
She was here.
I
Maybe
saw
she's
her
in-
earlier.
Yeah, she was here earlier.
All right. Yeah, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Congratulations, Jenny, wherever you are. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, and then can I have
I
a
move we
motion?
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We're adjourned.
Economic Development Committee will come to order. All members are present with the exception of Alderman Vitale, who is excused. We have one item this evening. That's an ordinance to amend the zoning code per the public hearing that we had this evening relative to animal services, rummage sales, and separation of distances for narcotic treatment centers.
Mr. Chair?
Alderwoman Keene.
I had a question. Steve, for the rummage sales, why 5 days? How was that calculated? And I just think if someone probably has a rummage sale, it's once or twice, hopefully a year. So you think Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So where did the 5 days, where was that pulled from?
I believe that's coming out of the state statutes. It's resembling a, something in the state statutes with the $2,000 and the 5 days. So, I mean, you could certainly consider another number, but we wanted to keep it relatively, nominal, small.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So and to pick up with Steve specifically, the where it came from was in the tax laws. So you can hold up to 5 auctions a year from one location without having to be considered anything other than occasional use. And so we figured 5 days is what the state allows for what appears to be commercial activity without actually counting it as commercial activity. That's where that came from. Plus the $2,000 actually comes from the other tax laws and secondhand dealer licensing laws that talk about if you have less than $2,000 in sales in a calendar year, then you don't have to get a license. So that's why those two were put in, because it ensures that we're not going to allow something that state law might prohibit.
Thank you.
What's your pleasure on the ordinance?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
We will call the Common Council back to order. I'll ask the clerk to take a roll.
Alderperson Stefanski.
Here.
Turner.
Here.
Grisham. Here. Haas.
Here.
Keen. Here. Lysick.
Here.
Ranky. Here. Rote.
Here.
8 present.
Quorum. We have a quorum. We will begin with the Administration Committee.
The Administration Committee recommended approval of items 28 and 29 and adoption of item 30.
Mayor Devine, I move for approval of the committee report.
Thank you, Alderman Haas. Is there any discussion? If there is no discussion, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Alderperson Stefanski.
Aye.
Turner. Grisham.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Keen. Aye. Lysick.
Aye.
Ranky. Aye. Rote.
Aye.
8 in favor.
Motion carries. Then we will move on to the Public Works Committee.
We'll be taking 32 and 33 separate. Public Works Committee recommended passage of item 31.
I move in accordance with the committee report on item 31, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Rote. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Alderperson Stefanski.
Aye.
Turner. Aye. Vitale. Sorry, excuse me. Grisham.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Keen. Aye. Lysick.
Aye.
Ranky.
Aye.
Rote.
Aye.
8 in favor.
Motion carries. Then we have item 32 and 33.
And they're essentially the same, I believe, so, yeah.
Mayor Devine?
You want to read them out first, or just for the record? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
The committee recommended adoption of items 32, or passage of items 32 and 33 on a 3-2 vote.
Thank you. Alderperson Grisham.
Okay, Mayor Devine, just to give a background for those that weren't in the committee meeting, I have a bit of frustration tonight that I just need to air. On our agenda, it stated that we were naming a street. There has been correspondence and discussion prior to this. After I had made a recommendation of the name, taking careful thought to the historical area of Chalmers now not existing, we have the opportunity to at least pay some homage to that historical area. In fact, Alderwoman Ranky suggested it too, and we had not even communicated it. So, you know, good minds think alike. However, in the middle of that, Mayor Devine spoke and said there was some confusion, that he didn't realize that there was going to be a naming tonight, although it's on the agenda as a naming, and mentioned there was some other name that potentially was being considered, and that maybe we should have the school-age children name and, you know, go into the historical society and all these other, you know, avenues of exploration. And I don't mind that. I'm just frustrated if there was a lack of communication internally. If it's put on the agenda that it's naming and we put that thought and consideration and discussion in prior, it kind of puts egg on my face a little bit when I'm making a motion, for one. Although I am going to stand behind my motion that I would like it to be named Chalmers Way. I think that gives, you know, credit to the area. It is definitely in line. I don't think we need to visit the Historical Society for them to come up with an idea other than Chalmers Way, unless it be Charles P. Allis Way. Edward, okay.
Built the
Okay.
houses.
So forgive me on that, but I'm just a little frustrated. I need to share that. So I hope I have your support in the vote in saying yes to Chalmers Way. I'm not opposed to saying we can look into it more, but I think that is our job to make these decisions. So thank you.
Thank you. And I will apologize if I missed something, because I wouldn't put it as egg on your face. It's probably on mine. Just in internal conversations, I did read it, and it does sound like it would be named, but there was some confusion and some gray on if this was happening tonight or not, so I apologize for that. Yeah. Any other discussion?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Haas.
Yeah, and I would vote for Allis. Chalmers had very little connection to the city of West Allis. Edward P. Allis had the connection to both the city of Milwaukee and the city of West Allis. It's what our city is named for him. Chalmers It was a car manufacturer who wasn't in West Allis, and I think that we're seeing kind of what the issue is. I think our council would probably be best not to vote on this, not to act on this tonight. Let's have some more discussion. Let's get other viewpoints, other input on this. Yeah, it's naming a street. That's a significant thing. We're gonna drive by it all the time, and that's something that's something I did during my tenure on the council. That's significant. I think Allis is the way to go, but I'm certainly willing to hear from other people.
Mayor Devine?
Alderman Haas, Alderman Stefanski.
Just so we know, we were told tonight that we have about till March to come up with a name, so we're kind of, so we probably want to discuss it at the next meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions?
If
Comments?
we want to go with Allis, then we can vote tonight. No, that's a joke. And if I may, Mayor Devine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on the sign, it would be West Allis Avenue or whatever, or street that we wanted to call it. And so, yeah, the directional would be still the little W, but then the name would be Allis. So it would be both West Allis and just Allis. I think that's significant. That would be fitting for the area.
Thank you.
Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Mayor Devine?
Alderperson Keene.
Yeah, I think we should give it a little bit more thought, kind of talk about the input. That would be my recommendation also, is to not vote on it tonight.
Did you move to approve the?
Yeah, at this juncture, there's already been a motion and
Okay.
a second, so we would have to kill that, if I'm correct, Mr. President?
Yeah.
Right? We'd have to kill this
would
motion, or I would have to retract the
Withdraw it.
motion, withdraw. So in respect to my colleagues and your input, I will withdraw my motion.
Do you want to replace it with a motion to hold?
Yes, and I will replace it with that motion to hold for our next council meeting to have discussion, because time is of the essence. And if there are any communications, I ask that that is shared with the council, not for any discussion, but at least that we are all on the same page.
And that is March 6th, 5th? Is our next meeting? So. We do not, but I think the city engineer had indicated March 5th would be. Uh-oh, the attorney's getting up.
There we go. Someone means business.
Sorry about this. I wasn't at the committee. I walked in late. Was there a vote from the committee to approve the name?
3 to 2.
That did come to council, so the council should vote still on it? A vote of no would just bring the item back to a pending state?
And then we can put it on the next agenda.
Correct. Or you could just move to postpone it to the March
5th.
5th. Someone could make that motion right now. Incidentally, it would be an open item then on the 5th.
I make a motion to postpone.
I think first we have to vote on it to kill it.
Do we have to first vote down the committee recommendation?
You don't have to necessarily. You could just simply move to postpone the item, and that would send it back to committee on the
Okay.
5th.
Withdraw and make a motion to postpone until our next meeting, March 5th.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, is that also to refer to the committee again, or keep it at council?
Refer to committee.
Thank you. All right, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The motion carries on items 32 and 33. Then we'll move on to the Economic Development Committee.
The Economic Development Committee recommended passage of item 34.
Mayor Devine, I move for passage of the ordinance.
Thank you, Alderman Lysick. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Alderperson Stefanski.
Aye.
Turner.
Aye.
Grisham.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Keene.
Aye.
Lysick.
Aye.
Ranky.
Aye.
Rote.
Aye.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Then we have the Public Safety Committee.
The Public Safety Committee recommended passage of item 35, approval of item 37, denial of items 38 and 39 based on non-appearance and their conviction record, and granting item 40.
Thank you.
Mayor Devine, I move for approval of the committee report.
Thank you, Alderperson Grisham. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Alderperson Stefanski.
Aye.
Turner.
Aye.
Grisham.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Keen. Aye. Lysick.
Aye.
Reinke.
Aye.
Rote.
Aye.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries.
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Lysick.
I move that we adjourn until our next regularly scheduled meeting, Tuesday, March 5th at 7 PM.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned.